you can see we are just barely getting to the end of the film here. So we kept
You have
a nice
no idea how hard it was for me to not watch the movie over your shoulder to see like how concurrent you were with like telling. I was just like, oh, you're right on point. Nope, you're a little bit ahead. It's catching up. And I was like, it was I was very I was like happily distracted because I'm just like, oh, it's like I get to watch the movie as we talk about it.
Funnily enough, yeah, we were almost keeping sync. That's just kind of how it played out. Hello, horror fan best friends and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 52nd episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror. Horror comedies, cosmic horror, body horror, folk horror, sci-fi horror, the horror-adjacent thrillers, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. It certainly helps with the engagement. If you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you are so inclined. It's free to do, and you look cool doing it. Audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so don't forget to leave a rating and a comment when you stop by. 5 stars if you're a real one. But enough of all that housekeeping, as I have the pleasure of welcoming Graham Brooker to his second Murders with Mertens appearance. Graham, welcome.
Thank you for having me, sir. My bearded brother from another mother. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. I dig the fact that we both have different types of Wolfman looks going on, which is very apropos for such a pod.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I know this one took a minute because we were both a little bit under the weather recently. So apologize. Well, I got to apologize here because if the audio is a little sniffly on this one, well, you get it. Yeah, man.
It's All Hallows Eve. We're just riding a vibe, my man.
Yeah. It's, it is what it is. But yeah, it's, what you been watching, what you been up to lately?
Living life, enjoying the spooky season, just cranking out horror movies. I think the most recent one I cranked out was Beetlejuice, but my true passion has always been a love for werewolf movies, and that is what we are here to suggest, and in my opinion, the greatest werewolf movie of all time to date, until someone can think of something that overtops it.
I mean, we'll probably get there at some point, but who knows? Who knows? I know we've got yet another version of the Wolfman, yet this time from Lee Winnell, coming out here in January. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. As far as what I've been watching, I will continue to extol the virtues of Eczema. Great Korean shamanism horror film that dropped at some point over this past year and is a nice companion piece to The Wailing. So, if you're into that kind of stuff, be sure to check both of those out. It'll probably eat up the better part of 6 hours watching those back to back because they are long movies. But that's some good stuff. And of course, the thing that I've been obsessed about over the past month or so, Dan Dan, with its wonderful anime and even better manga. I have read so far ahead beyond the 4 episodes of this show, but you got Netflix, you got
no spoilers, Joe.
Yeah. If you got either Netflix or Hulu, you just be sure to go check this one out because holy shit, it's a ton of fun, good horror sci-fi vibes, and it's just some fun high school anime shenanigans. If you're feeling sad because My Hero's wrapped up for the season and, just about finished up, there you go. But yeah, Graham, you mentioned we're gonna get our werewolf on here, and boy howdy are we ever, because tonight we're gonna dive into a favorite film from 1981, An American Werewolf in London, written and directed by John Landis and starring David Naughton, Jenny Agutter, and Griffin Dunn. I gotta say, there was a recent flash sale with Criterion, and I made sure to pick up After Hours, which I have never actually seen. So that was kind of an impulse buy, but I'm looking forward to that one. I see Terry Garr's in that. So rest in peace, Terry Garr. She just passed away the other day. Here is we record this on Devil's Night. Hopefully, God willing, this thing shows up. God and or Satan, this shows up on Halloween for your viewing and or listening pleasure. But all wonderful happenstance as we go into this. I've seen bits and pieces of this film over the years, over the long time that this movie has been around, but only recently have I seen it all the way through. And what a fucking romp. Graham, why this movie?
So the easiest way I can put it is, given that we're both products of the 80s, we were both movie store kids. So when I would go into the movie store, I've said this before to you, but going through the horror section and being intrigued by movie covers was
Oh,
always
hell yeah.
something that like grabbed me. And I will never, ever, ever forget just always walking past this movie of these two guys in these two puffy jackets staring up at the moon. And like werewolves was just my thing when I was a kid. It was like, I used to call them woo-woos, as my father and family would tell you. So then finally, when I was old enough and I was allowed and I saw this movie for the first time, I was just blown away. And it just made me fall in love with the genre to the point that I'm disappointed we haven't gotten too much that's really up to the same par. There are some, but not as many as I would like. And hopefully this upcoming year with the promise of a new revitalized interest will give us some future classics. But this movie, I think, is just amazing as far as horror, as far as comedy, as far as the subtexts and the importance between those subtexts. It's just something that I think is a very special piece to the horror community. So I wanted to talk to my good friend about it.
Hell yeah. Well, I appreciate that, man. It's this is going to be a fun one to discuss. Like you said, there's some interesting subtext in this film. It's certainly one of the greats as far as the subgenre is concerned. But you're right, we do have some other fun ones along the way. There's like several werewolf movies coming out even before the year's done. There's an interesting looking one with Frank Grillo. Like we said,
Just watched that trailer the other day.
yeah, that looks kind of cool. And I know January is often like the dumping ground for shit films, but that Lee Winnell version of the Wolfman sounds interesting, and always interested to see what he has to put out. Jesus wept. His version of the Invisible Man was definitely, definitely a fun time. God, what a interesting remake that was. And certainly modernized in like all the best and worst ways. So looking forward to see what he has to put out. Um, I don't want to wait any longer as far as jumping into all the goodness of this film. So I think we need to get into it. We start with the old Bobby Vinton version of Blue Moon and shots of the moors in northern England. Although I think this was actually shot in Wales. That is what it is. It's we get a truck full of sheep pulling up to a crossroads, and the driver getting out and opening up the back to reveal our heroes, David Kessler and Jack Goodman.
Interesting to be riding with sheep too.
Yes. And they are covered in sheep shit and looking a little sheepish themselves, aren't they? The driver helps him out of the back, and they help him close up the tailgate there. And he directs them on to the local town. It's East Proctor, I believe, and tells them to be careful and stick to the roads. Stay off the moors.
Stay off the moors.
That's what everybody says, right? And the young men are, clearly backpacking through Europe. And Jack, he's not exactly enjoying himself as much as David. Very much looking forward to the Italian leg of their journey. As they walk, they talk about a childhood friend who Jack is desperate to sleep with. And, we get this fun little bit where David's laughing reaction to Jack's runny nose, which was, his actually runny nose because of the crap weather while they were filming. And it just created the perfect take that they just kept. And the lines are a little goofy in the scene, but it's all because they've got great chemistry. They're, clearly lifelong friends, and it comes through in the acting there for sure. Um, yeah, yeah, they just kind of crack wise and walk on.
It
Um,
feels very, very genuine. Like they
yeah,
have been friends for a very long period of time. And it's like they instantaneously suck you in to be like, oh, like I want these two heroes of our story to go forth and survive and do whatever comes amongst them. Little do we know yet what
oh yeah,
awaits.
yes. That's for sure. And it's so funny because of the horrific stuff that does come later. We still get these moments of rapport between the two of them throughout all of that. It keeps coming back. Um, but they make it to town, and the local pub called the Slaughtered Lamb. 10 out of 10 pub name, no notes. The Slaughtered Lamb, and a great sign hanging over the entrance. Um,
Very welcoming.
oh yes, absolutely. Um, um, yeah, they enter the pub, and they get the expected reaction to newcomers that we kind of expect in these types of situations in films, and they go ahead and take their seats. And I understand that they're freezing and they want something hot, but they can't get soup, they can't get a warm meal. All they can get is tea. But for God's sake, order a fucking Guinness or something. Jesus. But no, they just get some tea from the bartender. It's at this moment that Jack notices this crudely scrawled pentagram on the wall, and he points it out to David, calling it a pentacle, and making a reference to the Wolfman. And don't worry, this film keeps doing it. Jack keeps trying to get David to ask the patrons of the bar about the sigil and the burning candles flanking it. But David's like, fuck no, this is already weird enough. They clearly don't like us. They're clearly, ready to just either make fun of us or, pester us in some way. We got to play this cool. But, yeah, this is where we get this crusty old dude telling a bad joke. And while the whole bar is laughing, Jack finally points out the star and asks what it's all about. And
What's
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah,
Dead silence.
dead silence. And we get the dart player. You made me
Made me
miss.
miss.
I'll never miss that board.
Have you ever
Eh,
like gone into like a locals bar and like just had the same feeling where you're like everybody
everyone's
here
staring
knows
you
everyone
down.
and
Yeah.
I am the outsider. It's this the ominous feeling that it is, and it's like they play it super well. And it's like, especially for being in a different country at a time where you're like an American outside of America, I can definitely relate to those feels.
Yeah, and they're supposed to be like young 20s, like graduate students, or taking some time away from school to go backpacking across Europe. It's like the cliche, right? And yeah, it's a little awkward for them. Um, and yeah, they clearly feel pretty awkward and threatened at this point. So they offer to pay for their tea and leave. And the bartender kind of creepily says that they can't let them go. And oof, yeah, that's a sign to get the fuck out of there. Um, the patrons ultimately relent, but tell the boys they need to stick to the roads and stay off the moors. Beware the moon, lads. As they finally walk off, they're like, weird fucking place. And it was, man, but boy, they could play darts. Um,
They could have tried a little bit harder to be
Yeah.
considerate. They
Yeah.
let them walk out of that place with a certain type of knowledge just way too easily.
Oh, yes, they did. Yes, they did. And, the bartender's very concerned back at the pub. She's again ominously telling the men they can't let them go. And I think it's the chess player there who told the bad joke. He's like, it's in God's hands now. And yeah, the boys walk on, wondering aloud about their experience at the bar when the weather starts to take a turn for the worse. They turn and um, they step out across the moors for some reason off the road. And probably like trying to get a bit of a shortcut to wherever they think they're going. But then back at the pub, the patrons argue over what might happen if something were to, well, happen to the boys.
Mm.
But they all pause when they hear an ominous howl. And
What a
this
what a guttural, awful howl it is.
Oh, and it's not even what you think of with like a typical wolf's howl, right?
Yeah.
Or what you would think of for a
There's no
werewolf
beauty
film.
to it.
No, no, it's ugly. It's and yeah, well, the bartender at this point pleads that they need to help the lads, but the men are just kind of sheepish and silent because they know what's about to happen here. Um, And back outside on the moors, the boys are a little unnerved by the howling. And they figure now's a good time to head back to the slaughtered lamb. Seems like a pretty okay place after all, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but they've kind of gotten lost in the dark. And, they're clearly being hunted by whatever's out there. Um,
Beautiful sound design too.
oh, yeah. Yeah. I want to pause here and be sure to mention the banter between these two. That's been going on for the entire fucking film. And I know we've already talked about this, but
Mhm.
it just continues. It is great chemistry. Um, you get, do you think it's a dog? Nice doggy, good boy. And all I can think of is a few years later, Ghostbusters. Nice doggy, cute little pooch. Maybe I have a milk bone.
That nervous nature, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like you said, like, it feels so natural and organic, like these 2 men have known each other for years and are long tenured friends, and it's like when you're in those type of situations, like, turning to comedy to be, like, a comfort factor when you are very feeling endangered situation, it just kind of plays so much more to, like, that type of, like, realness to a supernatural type of telling story because that's how we deal with these different things.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. And a horror film without any amount of levity to it, it just feels wrong.
Yeah.
You got to have something that breaks that tension. So yeah, they start to lightly jog away. This is where David trips and, Jack offers him a hand, but is immediately mauled by this large beast and David runs. He, at some point in the middle of this run, he thinks better of running away, probably because of all of Jack's screams for help. He's being guilted into it here. So he doubles back and finds Jack's mutilated corpse. Pause a beat, and then the creature attacks David, slashing his cheek with his claws and getting a couple of more licks in before it's gunned down by the pub patrons.
Did you
Of
come back for me, Joe?
course. I'd
I don't
probably
think
run
I'd
away
come back.
for a little bit,
My
but
ass would keep fucking running.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. It's like self-survival is like, if you're gone, it's like, maybe I'd come back, but probably not.
Oh, I would haunt your fucking
The movie
ass.
just
Then
ends.
I would haunt your ass, and we're gonna get into that. Yeah, yeah. So David manages to stay conscious throughout, and as his rescuers rush up to him, he turns his head to see a naked, dying man next to him in place of the beast. And he looks back up at the concerned faces of the pub patrons and promptly passes out. Okay. So they all clearly knew what was up. And here we are. Uh, Cut to a hospital room and a nurse played by Jenny Agutter checking in on David when he calls out for Jack. You ever see Logan's Run?
I have not.
Neither have I. I feel like I've seen bits and pieces of it, but she's from that. Um, yeah, it's something that's always been on my radar, but never gotten around to. So, yeah.
If all the nurses over in the UK fall in love as easily as she does, I need to go get attacked over in the UK.
Yeah, I probably need to do the same. Um,
Because evidently it's just sparks fly instantaneously, even with no conversation or connection.
you know, yeah, she's just concerned is all. Um, yeah, enter another nurse who throws around the word Jew like a slur, and they're interrupted by a doctor who thankfully knows that he needs to throw the gross one out. Um, he dismisses Nurse Price as well, but stops her to ask what David had called out. When she tells him Jack, she asks what happened, and he fills her in that the two were attacked by, well, what he says was an escaped lunatic. Uh, okay, cut to David dreaming of running quickly through the woods. It's a POV shot.
Mm.
Yeah, we know it's coming. He snaps awake when Dr. Hirsch calls his name, introducing him to a man from the American Embassy, played by Frank Oz. Now listen to his dialogue, but close your eyes and picture Fozzie Bear, and you won't stop grinning. Because it's the voice that Frank Oz is doing in this instance is one step removed from Fozzie Bear, and it's fucking perfect.
Yeah, how you doing, David? So nice to see you.
Please calm yourself, Mr. Kessler. Yes, the doctor reveals to him that he's in the hospital in London and that his friend Jack is dead. David's had a hard time believing any of this, and the doctor and the government stooge go a long way to upsetting him. I love that they're trying to calm him down, but they are ultimately just getting him much more riled up. It's especially the guy from the American Embassy, as he's just shouting at him to, basically be calm. Um, yeah, it's good.
Not the most calming tactics to use.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. The doctor calls for a sedative, and Nurse Price obliges. Mr. Collins, the guy from the embassy, tells David the police will be coming to interview him, and then he makes this snide comment to the doctor as he leaves about punks being completely unappreciative for everything that they do for them or whatever. It's revealed that David's been there for about 3 weeks recovering. And when David is again told about the lunatic, he persists that it was an animal, a wolf. He thrusts his fists against the post and still insists he sees the ghosts. Yeah, there we are. Cut to the
I always liked the
police.
touch of like the 3 weeks too, because it helps you set up for the moon cycle
Yep.
to come back so quickly with the passing of time.
Yeah, it is absolutely perfect timing for the film. That was very well thought out. Love it. We cut to the police stopping by Dr. Hirsch's office, and we get the fun, trope of the bumbling sergeant and the put upon inspector. He knocks over the stack of trays and takes his sweet time getting them all back into the right order and everything. Yeah, they're fucking idiots. And then
They
we've
are
got,
government officials.
well, yes, they are, of course. Cut to David protesting to the policeman that it was an animal that attacked him, but they're not too keen on having someone contradicting the official reporting. The police leave, and the doctor reassures him that in time things will become more clear. And we get another one of these great lines from the film of Doctor, my memory is fine. It's my sanity I'm beginning to worry about. Great delivery there. Um, it's one of these things where if you're just that clueless, you would have no idea this is supposed to be a young Jewish man, but all the clues are there as far as like the different mannerisms of speech, his surname, Kessler. It's, same with, his rapport back and forth with Jack earlier in the film. It's, it's absolutely perfect. You know, you get the gross situation of the one nurse sneaking a peek earlier, and you know clearly he's circumcised, but then you know Nurse Price saying "Hey, it's pretty common nowadays." It's yeah, it's again this is going to come up a lot here, but well, all in good time.
In
Um,
very large ways.
oh yeah,
And it's like,
oh
which is
yeah,
always funny. It was like, we will get there, but I just remember when I watched it when I was younger and I didn't know or pick up any of the subtext because so much of what you're doing when you're young is just surface value. We're just like,
yeah, it's
this is so
cool
out of
monsters.
nowhere.
It's
What is this? It's
yeah.
like one of those interesting facts about when you get older and you can absorb things in a more mature and like higher end type of way. You're like, oh, I
Media
get it.
literacy.
We
Yep.
can all keep growing. Who would have thought?
I know, right? Yeah. So the police leave. The doctor reassures him that in time things will be more clear. Yeah, he's worried about his sanity. Cut to another POV shot of him running through the woods. But this time it's also clear that it's David. He's naked and he attacks a doe, taking it down and eating it. Back to reality, Nurse Price dispensing meds in a children's ward to child actors who aren't particularly good at acting but get by on their sheer charm. I mean, this kid's fucking adorable. I just hope that he, you know, grew up to be an accountant or something. That's all I'm saying. It's one of these kids that has learned the power of the word no, let's say. Um,
We all have to give it the old try, you know?
yeah, you know it. Uh, Yeah. So she checks in on David from there, who hasn't eaten. You know, he's content to just, you know, listen to whatever he's listening to on his headphones in bed. Says he wasn't, you know, he hasn't been hungry. Sort of implied that he's full because he just ate a live deer, but I doubt he actually left the hospital in the night. Um, Price insists, however, that he must eat something as she needs him to take his meds, but on a full stomach. They get on a first name basis from here and they start getting a little flirty too. And then she starts to feed him. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's on. Um, Back to David again, dreaming of running through the woods, but this time in his down jacket and backpack until he spies himself laying in his hospital bed with Price coming to check on him, and then cut to a ghoulish David that this particular shot of him with the fangs and the makeup and everything, I always used to get this mixed up with the old TV miniseries of Salem's Lot for some reason.
It
Um,
is similar coloring,
yeah,
um, similar contacts.
yeah,
Um, Giant for me when I was younger, huge jump scare, and I think between this and Thriller were like the things that made me terrified of like yellow eyes for a very long point in my life.
yeah. They're very effective. I like it. I like it a lot. Um, Cut to David discussing his dreams with Dr. Hirsch. He can't believe how vivid and strange they've been. And yeah, Hirsch is kind of fairly dismissive, like, what, you've never had dreams before? Um, Doctor asks him if he got a good look at the man who attacked him. And David persists that it wasn't a man. The doctor inspects David's wounds. You know, not only does he have the marks on his cheek, but he also clearly has claw marks going across his chest. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, this is where the doctor tells him it's entirely possible for a man to rip another to pieces. But the young man doesn't think he understands the degree to which Jack was mutilated. Please remain sane, at least until you're no longer in our no longer our responsibility. The doctor tells him. Um, it's like, you know, thanks for nothing. Uh, David does,
That's the healthcare system. Some things never change.
yeah, pretty much. Uh, David doesn't want to be alone, so the doctor sends in Price to hang out. Flirtations continue. She reads him some Mark Twain, and we cut to the Muppet Show, which is always fun. Um, it's David back home, and he's got his younger siblings there watching the show while his father reads the paper and his mother works in the kitchen. Papa Kessler goes to answer a knock at the door and is gunned down by some Nazi werewolves who just burst in, guns blazing. They hold David hostage and force him to watch as they brutalize his family and destroy his home before finally slitting his throat. And it is violent. Um, I
And a
think it's,
complete like mind f, dude. Like
yeah,
when you see this for the first time, you're like, this is so out of nowhere. And then it's like, as again, like when you get older and you start to do research and you learn that, like, Nazi Germany was really trying to experiment and figure out if they could actually create like super soldiers with like all
yeah.
these different experiments. It's crazy.
Well, and all of Hitler's references to, some of his subgroups as wolves or wolf
Mhm.
packs. And, it's, as far as like werewolf lore goes, this film, feeds heavily on, the old Wolfman film with, Lon Chaney Jr. And that kind of is the basis for modern Wolfman lore, right? Um, but also, you've got older werewolf lore that isn't exactly what we think of it. Like Germany, for example, a werewolf or whatever type of shape shifting monster this is would have been more like a community protector more than a monster to be afraid of. And it's just interesting how all this gets, fucked with. Um,
And
but
turned into
yeah,
cursing. It's like, it's so much turned more into a curse,
right.
which I think plays even more into those subtexts and like all
Yeah.
these different types of metaphors that go into it. I've always found, I think it's one of the things that lures me so much to the love I have for like werewolf mythology and lycanthropy and all these different versions of it through shape shifting, through all different types of Native American theory
Mm-hmm.
and the folklore across all different parts of the world. Like sometimes I'm often wondering, I'm like, is there a chance? Like, I don't really believe in a lot of supernatural stuff, but
The fact
I'm
that
never
there are
100% on anything.
yeah, that there are like shapeshifter stories from like cultures throughout the world. And yeah, this is a very, very common thread. Again, not to get too tinfoil hat on all this stuff, but ultimately, yeah, it's very interesting, right? And yeah, I mean, again, this is where we feed a little bit more into the Jewish subtext of the film. You see the menorah on the mantle as the father walks by. He gives this dismissive wave at the door as he answers it with, "All right, already." It's there for those who know. Um, and like you said, John Landis absolutely knows what he's doing. It's fucking great.
So
And
much,
it's,
so much is done intentionally when you think it's not, and it's like it's
yeah.
very well thought out, very well
Well,
put together, and it's like
I mean,
if
it
you
was
know, you
filmed in
know.
1980. It's
Mhm.
basically 30 years, 35 years post World War II. And, it's very much like this, post war statement. I mean, you think of the werewolf as, somebody living with something that other people can't see, but he lives among them.
Mhm.
And, for a lot of Jewish folks, that's, been part of their experience. They look like them, but they aren't them, and they're the outsider. And it's eh, it's very, very interesting. It's so fun to watch this film through that lens. Um, and just, yeah, just God, I fucking love horror when there's, something more to be said than just the obvious in the film. and
Yeah.
it's clear that there's
It's what
other
makes it
stuff going
beautiful.
on.
Like we all look at this and we just like, oh, it's just gore and it's
Right.
makeup and it's these, but it's like, no, sometimes there's these messages that people are saying through a different type
Yeah.
of medium. And if you really listen,
Just
it
pay
tells you a
attention.
lot about
Yeah.
what the human experience is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes this so fucking cool. So yes, with the slitting of the throat, David snaps awake from his nightmare, and Price is still there next to him. He tells her that he's had a bad dream, and she's like, "Not to worry, knows just the thing." She goes over to open up the curtains. And when she throws them open, it's revealed another Nazi werewolf behind the window who crashes through and repeatedly stabs her with a knife. And this is where he finally wakes up. And again, this is one of my favorite horror film tropes, the dream within the dream within the dream.
Dream within the dream,
Oh,
man. It's always great.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
never get
So,
tired of them. Never
nope.
will.
It's so much fun. And yeah, he finally wakes up and then kind of drifts off again, but is woken up by the loudest fucking orderly ever delivering him breakfast. Um, and this is where he turns to the side and, good morning. Can I have a piece of toast? It's Jack. And he's, you know, it's looking a little worse for wear, that's for sure. They kind of settle into their regular back and forth here. Apparently, there was a little bit in this exchange that was cut out from the film where as he's eating the toast, it falls out of the gore in his neck. Um, that would have been fun to keep in. Um, I'm kind of sad they took that out. Honestly, it's
Especially
as
because it's just like it's that much more of an oomph to the like makeup abilities of Baker.
yeah, which are
Like
already fan fucking tastic. It's this is
we
good.
have a feast of special effects just like from this point forward in the movie that are about to be presented to us. And it's like it takes this movie to a whole new level, to which again, like in the whole pantheon of werewolf movies, nobody has replicated what they were able to do with this from the early 80s. That's
Yeah,
insane to me.
yeah, yeah. We got this in 81. It was filmed in 80. Just oh my God. So yeah, they settle into their regular back and forth, and David kind of thinks that he's cracking up. They discuss Jack's funeral and that, the childhood friend from before, that Jack was lusting after, and, the whoever it was that she consoled himself with. And, that guy's, a schmuck or whatever. And, Jack at this point snaps him back to attention with a warning. They were attacked by a werewolf, and now Jack walks the earth in limbo until the wolf's bloodline is severed. David will kill people unless he does something about it. And at this point, David's just kind of distraught and he calls for a nurse. Jack tells him he's got to kill himself before he kills others. Beware the moon, David. Beware the moon. And this is where Price rushes in to see what's the matter. And he ends up kissing her. And it's like this weird moment of him seeking comfort. And it's like super inappropriate. But he's like, I'm a werewolf. And
Yeah.
he just lays it all out about Jack coming to visit, and she thinks he was dreaming. He wonders if he was dreaming. This is where she offers him a place to stay when he's discharged. Um, and wow, it's a little shocking how quickly this happens. But it's like next day, and they're walking along and flirting a bit more, and you know, just
I was like, I've heard in Love at First Sight and sparks flying and stuff, but I don't think anybody would ever
I
bring
mean,
me back to their house after what seems like psychotic episodes in a hospital,
yeah.
screaming of lunatic rantings.
She's very accepting. They stop by a corner shop and pick up some food, and then they take the tube the rest of the way to their place while he's making faces at her over a bunch of punks. It's yeah, and they make it back to her place, and she starts to give him the tour.
Props to the
Clearly,
80s punk scene, by the
clearly,
way.
yeah. And they're clearly leading to the bedroom on this tour. Also, you can see that she's clearly a film buff. She's got movie posters everywhere in this place. Um, and this is where she says, as they make it back to the bedroom, that she finds him very attractive and a little bit sad, which is simultaneously one of the most charming and devastating things to say to someone. Um, I kind of fucking love it. It's
Well, who can't love a woman that wants to try and fix us? We
I
are all ultimately damaged at this point in our lives.
yeah, we're all damaged goods, that's for sure. And this is where
Even
she
the
kind
young men in their early 20s are already damaged.
yep, he's definitely worse for wear. Um, and she kind of stumbles over her words at this point, and then just abruptly offers her television while she showers, but just cut immediately to Van Morrison and the two making out in the shower. Yeah, we get some moon dance because why the hell not? Because every song in this movie has something to do with the moon. Um, yeah, it's a good
Brilliant.
soundtrack.
We didn't even mention that yet, but brilliant soundtrack for the
Oh yeah,
entire film.
oh yeah.
Just like
There's
so good.
really good stuff. It's not your typical soundtrack where everything is from the time period of the film. Most of the songs are quite a bit older, but yeah, they all work. Um, So yeah. Sexy times continue in the bedroom, and yeah, later David wakes up to use the bathroom, and he's shocked by a sight of a slightly more decomposed Jack in the bathroom mirror.
Only slightly.
Yeah, yeah, he's like, "You're not real," and don't be a putz, David. Again, all the Yiddish phrases that they throw back and forth at each other. It's fucking perfect. I love it. They head to the living room to speak. And Jack being just awesome in his mannerisms as they walk through the hall, sniffing at a little flower on the wall and so on. Um, but he's still very dead. Um, and Jack wants to reiterate his position that he doesn't think David quite understands. But David's like, no. You're the undead and I'm a werewolf. And Jack tells him again, yeah, but you got to end it. Um, and it's at this point that David wonders if he's even real. I will not be threatened by a walking meatloaf, he tells him. Um, this is where Alex, yeah, oh yeah. This is where Alex wakes up hearing David speaking in the other room. She goes to check on him, and he thinks he's going nuts, and she takes him back to bed to comfort him. And he tells her about Jack appearing to him and telling him that he's going to become a monster the next night. And I love that she takes him seriously and that she believes that he believes what he's seen. She's very much professional in this capacity, in that she thinks that he's been through some trauma, and he believes what he believes at this point, and there's no reason telling him that he's necessarily wrong. It's just best to just console him and help him how she can.
She is
Um,
simultaneously one of the most real human beings ever, but also because she's a healthcare professional, it's clearly fictitious.
yes, yes. She would be so fucking fired. Um, but yeah,
But like because she'd fix too many problems, and that's not what
yeah.
we really want to do.
Instead, movie. Yes. Uh, so yeah. He brings up the Wolfman. Like we said, that film comes up quite often, and how he thinks that a werewolf can only be killed by someone who loves them. And she delivers another one of those super devastating comments of hers, and they kiss. Um, Cut to, it's like the next day, and Dr. Hirsch swinging by the slaughtered lamb because, who doesn't want a several hour drive into the English countryside? Um, Not entirely certain why he decided to do any digging, but he's there to ask questions. Okay. You know, and when he gets into this pub and walks up to the bar, first he orders a Campari and soda. And then he quickly changes to ask for a small Guinness when he gets weird looks. You know, and my first thought is, see, at least he knows how to order a drink to blend in when he needs to. It's
It's like, who asks for tea at night in a bar? Just do what we all do and
I
assume that
understand you're
alcohol
cold.
warms you up.
Exactly. Get some whiskey in you. Or at least, like I said, a Guinness or something. God, it's and Campari is just one of those things where are you ordering a Negroni? No. Okay, why are you drinking Campari? Um, and that's more of a summer drink as it is. But
I agree. Not the
this,
biggest fan, but at the same point, there's weather that's going on here.
eh,
We have moods.
oddly, I think of a Negroni as kind of a Christmassy drink just because of the giant orange slice that you usually find in it. It's just how it feels that way to me, and the reddish color from the Campari. But to each their own. Um, but yeah, he presses the bartender and one of the patrons about that business with the American boys. But you know, everyone dummies up and is you know, super uncomfortable. Um, Tries coming at them from multiple angles, but no dice. Eventually admits that he's the doctor who treated David, and they press back at him. This is where we get the dart player leaving to go check on his dogs, but it's clearly an excuse to step outside. You know, the chess player's like, you know, your dogs are fine. What the fuck are you doing? Um, and Hirsch ultimately, you know, goes to leave and finds the dart player standing outside waiting for him in the churchyard. Um, the man warns him that David and the others will be in danger and almost comes out and says what's going on, but the chess player shows up to silence him. And the dart player kind of runs off at this point, almost eating shit, slipping in the wet ground. Um, it's this fun little almost folk horror type of scene of, you know, the town that is clearly covering up something horrific. It's cool. I
I
like
always,
it.
I always found this scene slightly odd though, because it kind of contradicts so much of the way that they play from the beginning scenes in the movie. Whereas like I always felt like it would make way more sense for the bartender to be the one that would have approached him with a little bit more of the truth, since
Because she
none of
was the
like
one
the
so
male players
concerned
in the
about,
bar
yeah,
ever seemed
yeah,
to show real concern. So it just seemed like a big shift of character for me. That was like, it just felt a little bit off. It was one of the only small gripes I ever had when I was watching the movie so
yeah.
many times.
I kind of feel like there's almost like there's missing scenes around this scene. You know, first of all, the doctor going to East Proctor to do some digging. Why? I don't even know that he's all that concerned about, you know, David's, you know, thinking that he's a werewolf and, you know,
Mhm.
that he was attacked by a werewolf and so on. Um, I don't know. It's a little strange. You know, maybe he just had a day off and fancied to drive. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. It's like this like the dart player, it's almost like this had been eating him up inside, and that's why he had to speak to this guy. But we don't really get any context around that. I don't know. It's you're
It
right.
feels like
It's
there's a
weird.
whole list of like extra here, like history to the town for like how this like epidemic of a werewolf issue has been going on through generations, almost like controlled inside this little area. And
Yep.
it's like this is the first time that has been able to escape.
Yep.
But it's like it's all just like it's below the water. It's not really ever discussed or shown. So it's a little fun because you can play with it in your own mind to build out what it might be. Like so much werewolf lore kind of does, because you think it's like,
Mhm.
well, if these things really do exist in the world, then they would be contained by these people that know it exists and just trying to control it. But if they're family members or loved ones or members of the community, They can't bring themselves to kill them. So the only thing you can do is to keep everyone else safe while it stays contained in your little area that's far off in the country. But then when it gets out into the world as a bigger issue, all of a sudden it becomes a larger sense of responsibility. Just me playing with theory.
Yeah. Yeah. And a larger sense of responsibility and a shit ton of guilt. So yeah. Yeah. Back in London, Alex takes off for work, leaving David at her flat. We get the small terrier that has a barking fit at him. And then he discovers that he's locked out of her flat. Luckily, he does find an open window and gets hissed at by a cat before climbing back in. Kind of growls and snarls at himself jokingly in the mirror before checking to see what's on TV. And here we get kind of a montage of David just sort of crawling out of his own skin. He's totally bored by the TV. So he bums around the apartment, listening to Bad Moon Rising by CCR, while, his anxiety is just absolutely palpable. Find it interesting that he opens up the front door of the building as well as the door to the flat, almost like he knew what was going to be coming later.
Yeah.
Like he's securing the escape route so that he doesn't break down a window or a door or something.
I never thought about that. That's a really interesting observation. Next time I do a watch, I'm going to look out for that.
It's weird. It just, you see him opening the fridge and he's like, I'm not hungry. And then later, I'm still not hungry. And just, he tries to read that paperback of hers and can't focus. And, he's having a rough time. And then, but also, great song. Who doesn't like a little Credence? Back at the hospital. We get Alex dealing with the no kid again, and we see the full moon has risen, and we also get another version of Blue Moon at this point. Back at the flat, David seems to have finally settled into this paperback, and then pause for a beat, and he screams out, "Jesus Christ!" and drops to his knees, tearing off his t-shirt, yelling that he's burning up. And suddenly he's like bathed in sweat and he continues to strip. And this is where Baker won his Oscar. Right here.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
First of all, I have to give him props. I've heard other people in reviews of this movie criticize his acting performance, whereas all I can do is praise it because, like, you can see this man is literally clenching every muscle in his body to sell pain. And I'm like, I have only ever seen it as completely believable. And I think it's just amazing. And then all of a sudden, Baker's magic kicks in, and you have the greatest werewolf transformation of all time.
Yep.
Never to be beaten again.
There is snapping and cracking going on. We get elongating digits. We get the wonderful line of, "I didn't mean to call you a meatloaf, Jack." And the bit where his head starts elongating with his mouth becoming more of a snout is so fucking dope. And it goes on for a really long time.
And it tells the pain of it.
Yeah.
Like, you feel that this man is going through like a massive amount of pain. And it's like, I always like the meatloaf line because it's almost like the last bit of his humanity before he becomes this hellhound.
Yeah.
And it's like, after that, it's gone. It's taken over. He's gone. This beast is out.
And it's a good thing he opened up those doors. David howls and we cut to the moon. We get a cab at this point pulling up to a row of townhomes and a couple getting out on their way to dinner with friends. The man gets this idea that they're going to go around to the back, to the gardens and give their friends a little scare by showing up at the back door. Um, and she's cold, but she's like, okay, I'll go with it. You're crazy, Harry. You're crazy. You're so crazy. Um, and yeah, as they head to the back, we get did you hear something just now? And that werewolf attack just completely out of nowhere, and almost instantaneous. Um, yeah. And
Destruction.
that guy is donezo. Um, he is torn to pieces so quickly. Um, and yeah, this is where we get their friends up in the home. The window of the dining room is up above from the garden, and yeah, the wife sees something going down in the dark from up above, and she thinks it's some kids up to no good or something. And you get the disinterested husband continuing to light candles at the table. He's more concerned about his wife being ready for their guests. We shift from here back to the hospital where Hirsch returns. He's wondering where Alex is, Nurse Price. Um, and we get her, um, little anti Semitic friend there who's clearly concerned about Price getting in trouble for sleeping with a patient. Um, you can tell by the looks that are being exchanged in this scene. But yeah, she's like, yeah, she's here. And Price actually walks up behind the doctor and he's like, hey, I got to talk to you. And she's like, let's go to my office. And it's clear that she seems to think he's upset about her seeing a patient and not the other thing. But then back, we got the two planes of action going on here. Back to the disinterested husband popping out to the garden gate, drink in hand, as his wife looks on from above. And we get is anyone there? And, a little sip and a shrug. Back to Hirsch's office, where he asks Alex to sit down and he tells her that he went to East Proctor and he's concerned about David. She lets him know that David's at her flat and he, wants to, call the flat and check on him. He just demands her phone number. Back to disinterested husband walking around with his drink in the dark. He's like, is that you, Harry? And splorch. Yep, that's a dismembered hand. Kind of sad that this guy didn't get attacked, honestly. Um,
Always the innocence.
yeah, yeah, the innocence of children and drunks. Um, and we
Just
get
trying to have a good time, playing a prank on your friends. Next thing you know, a
yep,
beast comes out of nowhere and mutilates you.
yep, yeah, that's how these things play out. We get the phone ringing in Alex's empty flat. Clearly, David is not there. This is where Dr. Hirsch tells her that he's investigated David's attack and there are no records, and even the file's gone missing in East Proctor. He's convinced that the town is lying and covering up whatever happened. Um, yeah, more than anything, Dr. Hirsch believes that David may be so fully believing in the werewolf narrative that he could be a danger to himself and others. That's where he grabs the phone to call the police. Um, again, similar to Alex earlier in the film, him taking this very professional look at things in that, okay, I understand that David, believes in this thing that he thinks is happening so fully that he's committed to it. It's not that he is the thing, but he's enough of a danger in that he believes in it. I think that's kind of
Power of the
cool.
mind is a crazy thing.
Yes. Yes, it is. Um, yeah, but yeah, he thinks that David very well may be a danger to himself and others. So he grabs the phone to call the police. And then we cut to some homeless folks in a junkyard clustered around a burn barrel. One of them's got a little dog who starts freaking out and then runs off. It turns out the dog had good reason to freak out because, yeah, Mary, Mother of God, in this transition from David's growl to the tube screeching into a station in the underground. Fun transition. I love shit like that. Uh, it's like, oh God, Don't Look Now with Julie Christie's scream when she sees her husband and her drowned daughter transitioning into the drill going into the side of the church 6 months later or whatever.
Mm.
Um, ooh, it's again super effective. Um, yeah. Let's see here. Um, so the tube screeches into the station, and there's a Wendy's ad on the wall of the tunnel. And now I want Wendy's. And this well dressed man with an umbrella steps out of the car and onto the empty platform. Do you know who this dude is?
No, I don't actually. He looks super familiar, but I do not know who he is.
It's fucking Bib Fortuna from Return of the Jedi. No joke.
Are you serious?
Yep, it is Jabba the Hutt's Major Domo.
Oh my god. That is an amazing piece of trivia I did not know that I will read.
Wadawanga.
Ooh, Java Java.
And now every time I see this dumb dude's face, all I can think of is Return of the Jedi. It's great. Oh. Mm.
Oh
But
man.
yes, fun bit of trivia
I love
here.
this whole sequence, by the way. This whole
Oh yeah.
POV like chase,
Well,
like
first he gets
leading.
out and he kind of looks around because the platform's empty. And he goes and he buys a pack of gum out of this vending machine. And he hears this growling in the distance, which gives him pause as he goes to put a piece in his mouth. And I love the whole, hello, is someone there? And then, hey, listen, I don't find this very amusing. I'm going to report this. It's, very, very much, 80s yuppie bullshit. It's not even, I'm going to report this. It's, I shall report this. Um,
In proper English form.
Oh, you know it. So he heads up the escalator with more Wendy's ads. Okay, who wants a fucking Baconator? Because I fucking do. And he steps into this longer hallway and he looks back when he hears growling. And with a good Lord, he runs. And I love these long tunnels. And it, it's really effective because, like you said, the POV shots of him running away down the tunnels and him looking back, but we don't get to see anything. And, going around these empty corners. And then finally he makes it to this other escalator and he kind of eats shit trying to go up and turns around as he ascends upward. And we get this super brief overhead shot of David advancing and then a
It's like the
POV.
it's like the first time you really get like a more of a visual of what this beast looks like. Because everything has just been like quick flashes of like the strikes of the head. And it's all like seconds, seconds, seconds. And this is the first
Right.
time you really get this impending feeling of like how large this thing is. Besides, like when you get the transformation, they do these teases of the body,
Yeah.
but you
And
never
it's all
see it.
close ups. It's nothing is, zoomed out and, like a big wide angle shot or anything. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it's super brief. And then it shifts into a POV of him advancing on the man before we cut to lions growling at the zoo. And it's clearly the next morning, and we get this montage of different animals, and it's almost like they're all perturbed by something, right? Um, and then we get David waking up naked in the wolf enclosure. And this wolf looking at him like, was it as good for you as it was for me? And
Yeah, I always enjoy the insinuation of this part.
Uh-huh.
Like something else happened here we did not see.
Yeah, that we definitely don't need to know about. And I think David is a little unnerved by it as well. Um, so he climbs up through, you can clearly see in the enclosure where he had just burst his way in, just, crumpling this fence inward. And he climbs up that and out through that opening. Um, and yeah, we get Alex in her flat on the phone with Hirsch. She hasn't seen him. Back to naked David sneaking around the zoo looking for anything to cover himself up. He runs into this lady with an umbrella and a fur, and he's just like, "Excuse me." And she just kind of looks at him and keeps on moving. Um, then we get him calling out to this little boy from behind a bush, and it's fucking gold. Um, it's like, "I'll give you £1 for your balloons." Okay, £2. And he finally walks over. Um, and
Because
yeah, he,
the, the levity timing in this movie is so consistently good.
oh
It's like
yeah.
you get these horrific moments, and then all of a sudden it's just like, we're gonna give you a little bit of a laugh too. And it's a great way to keep like breaking that horror, because like horror and comedy are always really married together.
Oh yeah, because
And
it's
it's like if
all
you can
about
time it so well.
timing. Yes.
Yeah.
Both of them, they need timing to be able to excel. And that's why you get that chocolate and peanut butter combination of the two in a film like this, right? It's, yeah. So he steals the little boy's balloons and runs off and then snags this woman's coat as he runs by. It's just great moments of physical comedy and him running around the zoo naked. Um, it's good. It's good. We get Hirsch grabbing a paper from a newsstand, detailing the prior night's carnage. And then the comedy of David waiting in a queue for a bus wearing only the woman's coat, and it's fucking glorious. We should all be so lucky to own as cool a coat as the one that he stole. I love how the guy's looking at him and he's like, "A lot of weather we've been having lately."
Normal.
Yeah, just normal
Pay it
bus
up.
stop conversation. Yep. Um, and he makes it home to Price, and as he enters the door with this big, loud, boisterous "Good morning," um, and as he quickly runs to his backpack and grabs a pair of undies, he lets her know that he woke up in the zoo, and yeah, he has no idea what the fuck happened to him. Um, and yeah, she gets a call from Hirsch at this point, and they kind of relay things back and forth to each other, and David's just kind of pawing at her, and yeah, clearly quite frisky. And Hirsch just wants her to get him to the hospital to see him ASAP. Um, just, hey, he's in a good mood. You can keep him that way. Awesome. Great. Get him here. We need to talk to him. We need to examine him. We need to see what's going on. Um, and so, yeah, she manages to get him out of the house and towards a cab. And he's like over the top high, super good mood, extra handsy with her the whole way. Um, but after they get into the cab, the driver mentions the 6 murders from the night before, and suddenly David just comes down like a ton of bricks. Um, very much crashing and realizing, oh shit, that was probably me.
Mm.
Yeah, well, it's a lot to take on, honestly. So he asks the driver to pull over, and David, hops out, and Alex chases after him. They're I think they're in Piccadilly Circus at this point. They're going around this big fountain, and ultimately he sees a policeman, Bobby, and he tries to turn himself into the cop, claiming that killed the 6 people the night before, and he does everything that he can in this moment to get arrested. He's bad mouthing the royal family, insulting the cop himself, everything he can do. And this guy is just way too kind to him in this moment.
Yet another unrealistic moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So he does everything he can, but he still can't manage to get arrested. And it's in this moment that David confesses his love for Alex, but tells her she needs to stay away from him. He kisses her and then he runs off. And she kind of steps off after him, but he runs out into traffic and she nearly gets hit herself. And, he gets away from her. Cut to immediately she's in Hirsch's office and they've got the cops there, who are not very helpful, basically just telling them all to stay put because they know they can find them there then. Um, we've got David in a phone booth calling his family collect. Unfortunately, he only gets his little sister. And, it's the super realistic conversation of, she's 10. No, she's 10 and a half. That whole exchange, of a guy who's in his early 20s talking to his 10 and a half-year-old sister and trying to tell her, that he needs to talk to mom and dad, but they're not there. And then, okay, I need you to tell them that I love them. And, clearly she doesn't want to do that and thinks it's weird and gross or whatever. And, he finally gets her to, let them know and, tells her, you got to tell my brother Max as well and you. And, he finally gets off the phone with her. And it's at this point where he's like, okay, we need to make this happen. And he breaks out this tiny ass little, what is it, Victorinox Swiss Army knife and attempts to cut his wrist, but he just can't do it.
This is the point in the movie where like this subtext of like the tragedy starts to kick in. It's like, because you constantly are filled with this hope, like, oh, maybe he'll get through this. Maybe love prevails. There's all these like feelings of hope that are kind of happening, even all this bad stuff is going on. But you start to really feel like the dire nature of like the werewolf curse and
Mm-hmm.
where our inevitable ending will be coming from. And I think he sells it very well. I think the
Yeah.
acting in these portions is fantastic.
Oh, he's distraught. It's, yeah, it's, yeah, very effective. He steps out of the phone booth and he sees the increasingly decomposed Jack across the street, gesturing for him to head inside an adult theater, and he follows. Once inside the theater with Jack, they get back into their old rapport. You get Jack calling him a schmuck and David apologizing to him, but Jack would like him to meet some people. And we're introduced to Bib Fortuna here, who tells him that he must die, David Kessler. And we get the half dozen corpses from the evening prior who all have their own opinions on how David should do it. It's, yeah, and they're, I think, mostly right to be a little pissed off at him. They all have to walk the earth as the undead until the curse is broken. Um, so yeah, they're a little antsy and they're all extra groupy because they are all fresh kills. Um, and yeah, the moon emerges at this point, and David begins to transform. And I find this incredibly funny, being that he's sitting in a porno theater and moaning and screaming, and you know, yeah,
Everybody just thinks it's normal.
yeah, exactly. He pleads with the other theater goers to run. And yeah, it all starts to happen again. Uh, let's see here. there's an usher that comes into the theater to check things out, and David attacks him. Um, you get the crowd of people running out of the theater, and there's a Bobby that goes inside to investigate, looking around with his flashlight, seeing a ton of gore, and ultimately finding David feasting on the usher. Well, that Bobby runs outside in a panic, and he tries to pull down the security gate to keep the beast inside. And you get that super fun thrashing and pushing against the gate of something trying to get out. I think that was a good choice. And for whatever reason, you get this large crowd of people that rushes forward to see what's going on. There are way too many people clustered around this powder keg of activity here. Um, but that's a little ill advised. And then we also get the inspector and his dumbass sergeant showing up at the scene as well.
The
And
skeptics.
yes, it's at this moment that David bursts through the gate and takes the inspector's head clean off, throwing it across his own car. And yeah, David rampages through Piccadilly, causing accidents and chaos. We would not get this scene without the Blues Brothers. Apparently, and I'm sure this is pretty well known trivia. We're probably, trotting over some well trod conversation here, but ultimately, um, films hadn't been filmed in Piccadilly in like 10, 15 years because of a bunch of drama of the last film that was permitted to film there. Um, but it was Landis's film, The Blues Brothers, and the different scenes of car crashes and so on, and how well that was put together, that he used to be able to convince the London police to allow him to film. And he had a very, very organized plan and only shut down traffic for a very minor amount of time. And he made it all work. And, it
Beautiful
kind of,
carnage candy scene.
oh,
Beautiful.
yeah. Yeah,
The
that's
amount of like quick shots we get of like just wonderful, wonderful gore and craziness is so good.
well, yeah, because you get people getting crunched by cars as much as you get people being slaughtered by David. That's John Landis getting tossed through that plate glass window as
Yep.
well. But it's like you said, carnage candy. And I love all the close-up scenes of David growling and snarling through the crowds of people as he charges forward. It's a little cheesy, but it also really works for this film. Um, and Hirsch wakes Price and they head off to Piccadilly because they hear about the chaos happening. We get the police kind of cornering David in this alley. Um, and we get shots of like an emergency response team of some type loading up their rifles and everything as they approach. And it's just like all hands are on deck for this thing, apparently. Um, and somehow Alex manages to burst through all these police and enter the alleyway. And they all hang back and just let her walk forward. Okay. But
Gotta do the classic Wolfman trope. Gotta go with
yeah,
the love angle.
you know it.
It doesn't make logical sense, but it works very well for the point in the movie.
Yes, it does. And she goes to try to talk him down. We get a David, is it you? And there is some recognition there,
Yeah.
even though he's still growling at her. And this is where she finally tells him that she loves him. But then he still lunges forward, and that's when the police gun the Wolfman down. And Hirsch rushes forward to Price, and they all look down and see a bullet riddled human David on the ground. And she weeps, And we are treated to the Marcel's version of Blue Moon and credits.
Cut. End. Scene.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
every good werewolf story, we end with tragedy.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know that there's necessarily happy endings in many of them. That's for sure. It's, I know we at least get sequels with Ginger Snaps, but, you know,
Well, not necessarily happy.
yeah. Yeah. They're not. Um, but yeah, God, what a fun fucking romp this movie is.
It's
It's,
it's I rewatch it every year. It's one of like I mean, like I have that list of movies that every I mean, I watch horror constantly year round, but
yeah.
every spooky season when everyone else that doesn't love horror year round starts imbibing, it's like it's one of those ones I have to put on, I have to watch. And it's just I don't know, it's just there's just something super special about it. And it resonates on so many different things for me that I always find a little something new and it's just really goddamn good.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that I, left alone, mostly like very specific dialogue, because
Yeah.
that is a lot of the charm of this film. The rapport of Jack and David, um, just, yeah, their back and forth is so crazy good. It's so entertaining. It's so believable with them as friends. Um, like I said, these just devastatingly effective and sad lines that Alex delivers to David, where it's like she finds him so fucking attractive, but also just sad as fuck. And it's like, I don't know that you know what you're doing here, lady. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but yeah, yeah, it's pretty devastating. You know, she finds him very attractive and a little bit sad. Fuck. It's fix me.
That's what we're all hoping for, right?
Yep. Yep.
Where's our nurse to just be welcoming, to bring us in, to try and fix us, only to see that we can't be saved
Yep.
because we are damned in the tragedy of life.
Yup.
Not really. We're not damned, Joe.
Well,
There's
well,
hope for us yet. We are not cursed werewolves,
speak for
but
yourself.
metaphorically speaking.
Oh, Graham, any final thoughts on An American Werewolf in London?
I mean, if anybody's watching this and they haven't seen this movie, even though we just ran them through the entire plot, I
Yeah,
beg you all to watch it
get on
multiple
that.
times.
Yeah.
Watch the special features, and understand. I mentioned this to you before we started this, but I will always wonder if Rick Baker got his way and he made his biped werewolf like he wanted to instead of John Landis's Hellhound on 4, what it would have been like besides the cursed werewolf that we got with the middle finger. It's like I wish we could have seen that, and it's like I'm even still hurt because when they made the Wolfman movie with Benicio del Toro, it's like he didn't even get to do what he really wanted to do with the
But didn't he
practical
win an
effects.
Oscar for that one as well?
I believe he did, but it's so CGI'd at the same time, and like
Yeah.
he evidently from the special features I watched on that one, like he wanted to do a full practical change, and he's never really gotten to, with all
Oh,
the skills he learned past this masterpiece, get to do his other werewolf one, and he's kind of sweared off ever doing a werewolf movie again because of all of it that's transpired. It's a shame because that man's a magician.
oh, hell yeah. I mean, here's hoping that there's like a protege of his who ultimately gets to carry that on at some point and makes that happen. Um,
There
you
is
know,
one, although he doesn't do anything anymore. He worked on a movie called The Howling.
oh, well, there
Mr.
you go.
Bottin, he
There you
also
go.
did The Thing, but he doesn't work in
Mm.
special effects anymore either.
Ah,
So we need more artists. Alec Guinness is the only one I know that's still going.
yeah. Ah, geez. It's so funny because the prior episode for Evil Dead 2, that movie was basically the birth of KNB. And, you get some super fun practical effects that are very cheesy and very dated looking, but work super well for that film. And then just the greatness that came from those people that were involved. So yeah, you like to see something of a legacy, but, yeah, sometimes it's not meant to
Keep the
be.
arts alive, people. Keep the arts alive. If you're interested, get into it.
Hell yeah.
Spooky season needs you.
Speaking of spooky season, let's see here. This should be airing on Halloween. Um, and ultimately, my friend Freddie Nudie has a small short horror film that he'll be putting out on Halloween. That, if you look carefully, there may be a small little cameo from a certain someone in it. So keep your eyes open for that. I will put a link to that in the show notes on this because it promises to be a good time. But yeah. I hope everyone has a happy Halloween, yourself included. Graham, where can people find you?
If you're interested in following me and my crazy ramblings, you can find me as Graham the Mark on Twitter. I will never call it X.
Fuck X.
Yeah, fuck them. And especially fuck the man that owns it.
You know
Where
it.
I will be plugging this wonderful podcast to my 500 plus followers, of which 90 might be real and the others are all just corn bots.
Yep, you know it. Again, speaking of this airing on Halloween, yeah, there's precious little time left, but we're coming up on election day here in the United States. So, motherfuckers, get out there and vote, please, and thank you. Graham, thanks for coming on. I appreciate seeing your face and hearing your voice. We will do this again at some point in the future. But yeah, really appreciate you coming on for this one. This was such a fun one to talk about. And yeah, appreciate the hell out of you.
I appreciate you too, Joe, man. I love you. I know we never talk as much as I would love to because life gets crazy and we
It
get
does.
sick and things happen. But you're an important human being. You're an amazing man.
Oh,
I would just want to
geez.
see nothing but success for you in this podcast because you do great work, man. You're just good people.
Well, I appreciate that. This has not been a good year for it, unfortunately, but I aim to keep on keeping on. So thanks again. And this has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode, but until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.